nobody up to that point had done anything like that before. I was on the front page of the Mirror as
really. Well, you
evil
were
acid house baron.
Oh wow.
Yeah. We used to send decoys out, so
I love it.
got arrested many times. We were followed the whole time. We had our phones tapped.
Even just not talking about acid house, I'm on a downer now.
Before we start the next episode, just want to say a huge thank you very much to everybody who has tuned in, subscribed, liked. We couldn't do this without you, and we're going to do everything in our power to make this one of the best music podcasts ever. But we do need your support. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, but always click that subscribe button so we can keep sending you the best podcasts. So here's the next episode. Thanks. Welcome back to Loud Unfiltered, the podcast where we dive deep into the people who've helped shape the underground scene. I'm joined by my co-host Grego, all the way from Ibiza. All right, mate, how are you enjoying the cold London weather?
It's raining a lot. Yeah, I want to go back to Ibiza. So,
all right, well, you'll be home there in 2 days, mate. You'll be home there in 2 days. Yeah, today's guest we're super excited to have on one of the UK's OG rave promoters back in the late 80s and 90s. He was throwing raves all around the M25 and beyond for thousands of people, navigating how to stay away from the police and the authorities. And he has hundreds of stories to tell us about those days and the glory days, basically. It's 30 years since then, and he's had a successful career as a DJ, producer, and also launching a number of music tech projects, which we're also going to dive into as well. But yeah, please welcome to the podcast, Quentin Chambers. How are you, mate? All right, welcome.
Good. Used to the cold more than Grego is.
Yeah,
nice
you live in London?
Yeah, I live in London. Yeah.
Right, okay, so you are used to it. Yeah,
yeah.
Good.
We've got an office in Ibiza, but yeah, I live here.
Okay, amazing. You probably got so many stories to tell, and I know you were busy writing about them just before we came on. But yeah, we're really excited to hear. So yeah, I really want to jump straight into it. Yeah,
take us back to the mid 80s. Like you were into music for young, and going out before you started throwing the parties.
Even before I started going out, I was really into music. I started drumming at a very early age, about 10 years old.
Yeah.
So by the time I was about 13, I was a pretty competent drummer. I was, in bands at school. Very into my music. When I was still at school, I discovered Electro. In about 1985 when I was probably 14, which was, quite a game changer for me in terms of how I approached music and how I looked at music. As a drummer, I found it very rhythmical and started, replicating those patterns myself as a when I was practicing, and ended up trying to build an electro band with friends, and
right, that's sort of the era then.
So I kind of fell into electronic music quite early, and I fell into clubbing very early. I was a bit of a rebel, the youngest of 5 kids. So, my parents didn't have a lot of time for, keeping tabs on me by the time they got to their 5th child. So I was quite wayward as a kid. And as a result, started discovering stuff quite a little bit earlier than other people and my peers.
One of the things that's often said is that there was an explosion of acid house. It was like, it's described as an explosion. It kind of almost like it happened overnight. Can you remember like when those first things were happening, the first clubs in London?
So it moved very rapidly from how I remember London club life being, mid to later in the 80s, where it was very much kind of Blitz Kids, Rare Groove, Northern Soul music being played in clubs, and then acid house just started just dripping in very, very gently, where a DJ would play a couple of tracks and normally clear the dance floor.
Right.
But it was all about, back, pre-acid house, it was all about kind of, ultra style, big lapel 1980s fashion meets like high fashion Blitz Kids kind of avant-garde, fashion people going out in London. And then acid house arrived and completely turned it on its head. A lot of those fashion people then just became ravers.
Yeah, I was going to say ravers.
Ditched their, Jean Paul Gaultier and put on, fluorescent Mambos and went clubbing. And people's attitude completely changed from this kind of, quite Thatcherite attitude of, consumerism to much more of a hippie kind of lifestyle, right? And acid house exploded very rapidly between, early 88 and late 88. The first party I went to, a party called Hedonism, probably had about 300 people in a warehouse in Acton or wherever it was, right? Within a couple of months after that, you had things like Spectrum opening, 1,000 people.
That was Oakenfold, yeah.
Oakenfold,
Yeah.
and
Shum as well, Danny Ramplin.
Yeah. Shum previous to that had been doing one-off parties, but Spectrum had 1,000 people on a Monday night every night.
On a Monday night,
every month, It was on a Monday.
This was at Heaven, was it?
It was at Heaven, yeah. So there was 1,000 people rammed every night. Just incredible atmosphere in there. But it was a strong produced club. Had a turbo sound system in there. Lasers. So strong sound system. Very very strong musical curation. Oakenfold at the time was amazing. Trevor Fung was one of the leading kind of acid house DJs at the time, and just a regular crowd, 1,000 people.
It's interesting when people talk, especially about Ibiza, and they say it was better back in the day and stuff. And I always say to them, well, in '99 when I first went there, people were saying that then about it, and but the difference was that was still 10 years after the scene began. Did you know? It's hard to describe it, but did you know something was happening? Did you feel like, wow, this is something?
So it was completely new. It was completely new because the music, whilst it derived from disco, it was very much electronic, and it was the combination of the music, kind of the political environment at the time, and am I allowed to say the
chemical supplements?
You can say what you want on this podcast.
The drug ecstasy that came about at the time, and those three things combined to create this kind of new scene, right? And at the time, we all did realize that it was something really new. And the culture around it was very new as well, but it's very different to what had come from before, the hedonistic nature of it, the freedom that people had at these events. Prior to Acid House, clubs wouldn't let you in if you're wearing trainers.
Yeah.
Black and white people didn't used to go to the same clubs, right? Poor and rich people didn't used to go to the same clubs. And then Acid House turned that on its head. And one of the things I'm most proud about my involvement with Acid House is the fact that it brought so many people together, and it really did bring down the barriers of racism and class culture and all of these things.
Well, it's the classic example, isn't it, about football hooligans are fighting on a weekend and hugging on the dance floor and the same day.
In a party, you would have football hooligans, gangsters, posh kids, kids from council estates. Literally, a whole microcosm of society would all be together and all getting on.
Yeah, that never really happened before.
It hadn't happened until then.
So yeah,
maybe it happened in the 60s.
Yeah,
to an extent.
Yeah,
but I don't think it probably is wide.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating to me, this, because obviously I'm a electronic music fanatic, a dance music culture fanatic, and when you think about that, it's that even with all of us, it's like if and why I love living in Ibiza as well, because straight away when someone lives there and they're involved in music, you're probably going to have more in common with. You're probably going to get on with them, compared to if you work in a bank or something. That person could be a serial killer or could be into songs of praise or whatever. But you could have absolutely nothing in common, but you have the same job. So it's fascinating to me that those people who previously had nothing in common then had this thing in common, which actually became the most important thing for them, probably.
Yeah. And then there was the community built around all of those people, and everybody felt part of it. And I think that was, that's potentially what's a little bit different now, is because it's so exposed and everybody's done it, and historically it's been going for 40 years.
Yeah, that's the other thing, which obviously you can never recreate it being new again. No. That's been done. Even in '99, as I said, in Ibiza when I went there, which seems like such a long time ago, it didn't feel new to me because I knew 10 years of the history, even though I'd not been there before. I knew all of the history, so you knew it wasn't new, even though that seems like part of the old days. What I would say though is that even then it was like there was still an element of
different kind of new.
It was an element of carefree where people like yourself have been doing it, and you can go on to explain to us in a minute, but people were still a little bit carefree, like this might not last forever. So like the way they dealt with things and did things was a little bit like, right, we need to make the most of this because in 5 years it might be over and done, and a new trend comes along. Obviously, it's amazing that 40 years later we're here and it's still going. But moving on to, how did you then end up going from the dance floor to organising your own event?
So I was out every single night of the week. Once I discovered Acid House, I was out.
And
Literally Monday.
How old were you?
So I was 18.
18, right? Okay.
Yeah. So in '88, I was 18, and I was out every night, and we were a really strong community of people. Everybody, everybody knew each other that was going out regularly, and I just wanted to be involved in the community, and so together with somebody that I knew called Jeremy Taylor, who had been organising the Gatecrasher Balls, which were these really quite successful black tie events for posh kids. Spoke to him and said, look, I'm connected to the scene, and I'd like to throw some parties. I don't know quite how to do it. I've got the kind of creative ideas about what I want to do, and you've got the organisation skills to put on an event. So can we do some stuff? And we our first party was at the Brixton Academy.
Oh, really?
Oh my God! So it was in proper venues to start with.
3,000 people, legal.
Okay.
Because he knew the kind of legal structures of doing stuff.
Who played at that one?
I can't remember. It was called Hypnosis. It wasn't an energy party.
That's not the one with Carl Cox. That was later on.
That was
later.
Yeah. I mean, we ended up doing, I think, 9 or 10 parties at the academy.
So how did you go from doing it?
So I kind of fell into doing these acid house parties. Partnered up with a very influential kind of guy on the scene called Anton Lapara. Came up with the kind of energy brand idea and strategy, and then got involved in a weekly club night actually that we did before we launched Energy, that was very successful, called Fun City, on a Friday night. And it was with the first late license in London, 6:00. So we kind of grew a little bit slowly between '88 and when we put on Energy, and then as soon as we launched Energy, that was.
And how did you? So talk us through, because I mean, I'm a promoter, so this fascinates me. How did you do this? How did you find the location? How did you decide what to do? Sound systems, and I guess the most interesting thing is the communications.
The communications. I'm really interested. Yeah. How did you tell people about it? Yeah.
So things progressed quite quickly in terms of how the police would react to your parties and such. I mean, our first event as Energy we did in Westway Film Studios, which is just behind where Westfield is now, and it was black and white. It wasn't black and white. Sorry, it was grey whether we needed a license for this place, but it was a kind of an official building where you could do stuff. But we went in there and told the authorities that we were actually shooting a video. A music video, right? We created a membership for Energy where everybody had to give us some details, and then we had that registered in a book. So back then, as a private members club, you didn't need a license to have an event. So that was the kind of grey area that we used. And actually, we had a QC on site at a lot of our parties to counter the police as they came in if they wanted to stop us.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
So I mean, we had a QC for our biggest party, which was about 25,000 people just off the M25 near Effingham.
Just one,
we just one QC, one QC, but he kept the party. He kept the police at bay for long enough for us to then announce on the phone lines that where the address of the party was, and then we said the first 5,000 people could come in free, and of course thousands of people roadblocks.
Let's go into this. So you find a location. Where are you finding sound systems from? Is that just organisation with your partner?
So we had we work with pretty much the same people throughout the whole of our time, 88, 89, 90 in terms of production people. So Entech were our sound guys. Halo, who's still going today, a guy called Yam was doing all of our lighting. He was actually based in Westway Studios. So we built a Mark Holmes who is now a really, really successful art director. So he did the art direction for like Martian and a bunch of Ridley Scott films. Was our creative director.
Okay.
So he built all of the kind of.
Yeah, what did you have production wise? What kind of?
So what set Energy apart and what made us a massive brand overnight was our production. So when we did the film studio, we recreated what was on the flyer, which if you see the flyer, and I'll share it with you, is a kind of
we'll bring it up on the show.
There's a temple with like kind of mirror ball inside it, and it's all very fluorescent, and there's a futuristic skyline behind it, and we basically built that in the studio.
Amazing.
So when people walked in,
they're on a different planet.
Just like one,
it was the flyer, which they were amazed by, right? And two, it was just next level production. Nobody up to that point had done anything like that before. We had a quadraphonic sound system. Nobody had really heard a quad sound.
I think this is, sorry to interrupt, but this is almost perhaps something that's not as well known as it should be. That perhaps the perception is that these raves were obviously big raves with a lot of big, but they were kind of done on DIY and basic. When actually it wasn't. It wasn't basic at all.
It wasn't basic at all, actually, at least where we could control it, right? So that first party, so that was the temple room. We built a kind of replica of like, the streetscape from Blade Runner in one of the other rooms.
Oh, wow.
Because Hobbs, Mark Holmes, he was a film set designer, so he'd just come out of Camberwell University, and he had access to all of these film props and stuff.
Oh, you built the right team. So brilliant. I love that. Just getting creative.
And he designed the flyers as well, so everything was joined up. So, so that experience really set us up. And coming back to your question, no,
I just said that in terms of when we come to communicating this to people, then I just have visions of hundreds of cars leaving service stations,
or meeting in pubs.
So when we started doing the orbital parties in a warehouse and outside, it became quite an operation to get people to these places, right? The first party we did was a bit more straight up. It was advertised as being a film studio in London, and it was a bit more, we could get information to people without having to be too worried about the police, right? By the time we did our second one, we tried to do that in a big aircraft hangar just off the M4. That got busted by the police.
Is this the one near Heathrow?
So that was our second one,
right?
And then we restaged that party 2 weeks later in the old FedEx.
I was going to ask, how long did it take? Was the party going before they would shut it down?
So
get away with it?
The only party that we ever had shut down was our second one. It was shut down during the day when we were setting up.
Right, okay. So I've got an interesting fact for you. So I only found this out a couple of weeks ago. My uncle used to be in charge of like the environmental health. He used to go around and shut down all the raves. So
he might have been the one responsible.
I couldn't believe it when he told me. I was at my sister's wedding, and I was like, "Oh, so what did you?" Because he obviously knows I'm involved in electronic music, and
in the pay
he just told me this, and
yeah.
my jaw just dropped. I went, "Well, I know a lot of people who used to put those raves on." Funny enough, someone's coming on my podcast telling me all about that. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. So I'd love to find out more. But yeah.
So the police had something called the pay party unit. They had hundreds of people.
What? Sorry,
it was called the pay party unit, headed by a guy called Ken Tappenden. And they had hundreds of police, access to helicopters. We were followed the whole time. We had our phones tapped.
Yeah.
So you had to have a kind of quite a
you had your phones tapped as well.
Because you had a phone. So I was going to ask.
So I had a phone.
You had a phone.
Yeah, I had a mobile phone, one of those phones.
Yeah.
There weren't many of us that had them, but as a promoter, you really needed one.
And so later on, would you? Am I right that there would be a number people would dial into to get their location?
Yeah. So
then you'd have to start changing. It'd be multiple stops to get to the.
So we had a number of ways of getting people to the party. So one, we had a network of ticket sellers who were essentially mini promoters. They all had their own crews. They all had people would go to them physically to buy a ticket. And then the instructions would be given to those people physically.
And how much is a ticket? Sorry, how much?
15 quid.
15 quid.
I mean, I thought it was like 30, nearly 40 years ago. So
yeah. It's probably the equivalent of 40 quid now.
Were you making money on these shows?
So we never really made any money.
Yeah.
Because my partner hated me because I used to always spend, almost as much on production as we ever made.
Yeah.
So unlike some of the other rave promoters that had much more minimal production than us, we very rarely made. I mean, we lost money, quite a lot of money on some of our parties. I mean, we did make some good money on some of them that were a bit more where we could judge a P&L properly, like when we went eventually when we went legal and started doing stuff in places like Britain Academy.
I was going to say, did it feel very DIY and what you were doing, or did you feel there was, I wouldn't say professional to it, but like you were organised, you knew what you were doing. It wasn't just, we're just going to set up a sound system.
No, we were organised. We were organised. I mean, and luckily we were working with people who really knew what they were doing as well.
I guess you had to be on the
production side, right?
Because of the authorities as well. That probably...
My partner, Jeremy, was very organised. He's very organised. I was creative. So I was like, okay, this is what we want to do, on the music or on the production side, on the branding, this is how I want the brand to be. But he, without him, I never would have been able to do any of it because, I wouldn't have been able to put it together.
Yeah.
And I was out every night as a promoter. I was the promoter. I was the classic promoter, like out every night promoting my own parties, and that's how we started along.
So we were talking about how people got there. So you had the mini promoters.
Sorry,
and then
so they would then gather people at a particular meeting point on the night or on the day of the event.
It's so exciting.
I want to go to one.
Get in a convoy. He would lead the convoy. He would be the only person that knew the address. And then he or she would then drive everybody to the party. So what would happen is you'd have thousands of people turning up at the same time, and that created quite some logistical problems for police, especially on a couple of occasions the police got to the party before the ravers did. But when you have thousands of people turning up at some point, once they we had one incident where all of the ravers basically parked up on the side of the road, got behind the security. The security then marched them through the roadblock, and all the police basically just got back into their vans. And
because
then everybody was in the party. And once you had a massive thousands of people in your party, that's it. They
couldn't do anything about it.
They wouldn't go in.
Oh right.
What tactics did you use to? Again, I know I'm going into the detail, but what did you? How did you try and escape the police finding out about it? Then did you fake numbers and
I mean, there's
decoys and
a few people have heard this story, but maybe some of your listeners haven't. But we used to send decoys out. So
I love it.
so our production sound guys, Entech at the time, we used to produce. So when we did the outdoor, like the big outdoor and warehouse stuff where we had to be really fast and nimble, we used to basically pre-produce everything on 40-foot low loader trucks. So the system would be left and right, each with a lorry bed, basically. So at 100k of system, you just drive it in left and right of the stage, which you put up quite quickly, and you can literally get set up and away in a couple of hours, right?
Oh, really? Right. Okay. So that was a massive help. So you just rock up anywhere and off you go.
Yeah. I mean, we used to have a lot more production than that, which we wanted to set up. But if you really wanted to, you could drive in and get set up.
So this is just.
So we used to. So they used to send on I think at least one occasion we knew that the police were watching the production people. So we sent these decoy lorries out, covered, and watch the police follow them off, and then the real lorries.
Then off you go the other way.
The other way.
The only thing I can think which is slightly similar is when people are trying to find the after party in a villa in Ibiza and they're hanging around the end of the party trying to get the wristband, asking people, do you know where it is? I guess it's a little bit like that. And even people get sent to the wrong place.
I mean, it just sounds like exciting. Were you excited really doing exciting. It? And was that part of the buzz that like you're putting on this thousands of people coming out trying to evade the police?
It was super exciting. It was. I mean, I was young. I was 19 years old. There's
you were 19.
No way.
Wow.
I would ever do anything like that now in my old age.
Yeah, but even for a 19-year-old, there's not many 19-year-old promoters nowadays putting on stuff. For you doing that.
I started early.
Yeah, wow.
I think sorry to jump in, but that we talked yesterday about being a booker and a promoter. What's interesting about that, and it's just being able to curate and provide lineups, and it gives you a buzz. But there's no real jeopardy of, I don't know, DC10 or being. I mean, it was obviously at one stage closed down, but generally, the club's going to be open. The sound's going to work. Whereas everything was a risk, I guess.
Yeah. And if you didn't have the police, you had gangsters.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah,
because
think
you were
about the gangsters.
basically you were operating kind of outside of the law a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
So what was the relationship like with organized crime then? Like,
We had, I mean, I don't want to really go into it in this. I don't think it's particularly interesting, but you know, it was an issue at a couple of times, and certainly later on in my promotion career, it got so unwieldy that that was the reason why I stopped promoting.
okay.
Well, okay.
Who was playing at these gigs? Who was playing?
So yeah, I was going to say so. You know, I was just looking at my first Energy flyer, and you have people like, you know, you have Paul Oakenfold, Judge Jules, but then you also have Mr. C and Evil Eddie Richards and Steve Bicknell. So you had like, you know, what is now very, very diverse DJs. But back then, you didn't have this genre delineation that you have now, right? Everybody was playing house music and lots of people playing all the same records because
there wasn't so
many. There weren't so many records. There was, you know, you had a slight delineation between maybe kind of more garagey US house, you know, pure acid house, and beginnings of maybe some kind of more ravey UK like KLF type stuff. But really, everybody was playing similar records. You had the Italo house thing going on, so you weren't necessarily curating like you curate now, where everything is. You know, you have so many sub.
I guess there wasn't as many DJs either.
There was 30 DJs or something at the time, right? So everyone was booking the same people. Everyone was playing the same music. So in a way, that made. But
sorry to jump in, but that's also what created the community in the scene, because it meant that everyone knew the artist. Everyone knew that. So when that record comes on, this is one of the things that I do think is different now with the like stratification of music, that, you know, everyone's listening on different platforms in different places, so it's hard to have a moment where a tune comes on and everyone's like, I know this one.
Yeah. I mean, there were classics.
The mixtape that's been passed around or whatever. So,
you know, a lot of the classics that are still classics today, the Strings of Life and records like this, they were very big at the time, and everybody used to play them and used to sometimes hear them 2 or 3 times a night. And it was actually more about the music than it was about the DJ. You know, we were paying DJs 100, 200 quid at that time.
Wow.
Right? You know.
These events, they were night to morning, or?
So generally evening till nobody was left, or, you know, classic kind of.
Would they go on for days, or was
they could go on for at least 24 to 36 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
nobody obviously bought a tent. Nobody bought a tent. You know, there was no, you know.
All right. And again,
people would arrive at, you know, when we opened the doors, right, and they would leave. A lot of them would leave the next afternoon.
Right, okay. And I'm getting into the detail here. Like, did you
I love it, mate. I really love hearing about all this.
Like, what about things like, you know, obviously the first ones you're focusing on the production, but later on, you know, even the food, the hospitality,
drinks, the bars.
So we had
fairground, all that kind of stuff. Did you start developing this type of thing?
Yeah. So we always had fairground rides at all of the big raves that we did. It was just a thing. I mean,
it was a thing, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was just a thing. People loved it, and, you know, and we didn't used to sell alcohol.
Right, okay.
There was no alcohol, and so you couldn't buy alcohol.
You couldn't buy alcohol.
No, because it was against the law.
Yeah, it was.
That doesn't even make sense in itself.
You know, ultimately, whilst we were operating a little bit in a grey area in terms of being able to put on these things, we actually tried to be safe.
Yeah.
So we had security, we had medical officers on site, there was an ambulance, you know, we didn't sell alcohol. You know, we tried with as much as possible to remain within the law. The only difference being the law thought that we shouldn't be putting on the parties, but the law actually didn't state that we couldn't put on the parties.
Yeah, it was a very grey area.
Until they changed.
This is 80.
This is 89.
89. Yeah. And at what point? What do we call it? The acid house crisis. What's the word? In the press panic, moral panic.
Oh, so that's
the moral panic. When was that, and how did that affect what was going on? And
that started happening.
You were Public Enemy #1.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the front page of the Mirror as
really. What you were?
Evil acid house baron.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
that was you.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Jeremy and I, we were listed as, you know, the evil acid house barons. So what happened with the press is they first of all it was at the Sunrise Party at White Waltham, where they where they what was it called? Sea Airport. Their headline.
Yeah.
Try and find that. And
Well, okay, yeah.
We'll
yeah.
find it,
but they were talking about people biting heads off chickens and ecstasy wrappers all over the floor, which was confetti. And you know
wow.
they you know. But what happened was everybody that read that thought, I want to go to that.
It made it even worse.
And it was in the sun, and that helped turbocharge the whole thing. I think the press were more responsible than us promoters in turbocharging, you know, acid.
Well, I think
publicity
and then
around
later
it,
they got on side and they started printing their own smiley face T-shirts.
Yeah,
and stuff.
of course. No, but that's the thing is that I used the word moral panic because it was that, wasn't it? That you know, more than the sum of its parts, panic over, you know, completely over exaggerated. And you see these BBC reports of, you know, there was an event that happened yesterday at Heathrow Airport and 10,000 raves.
Your faces would pop up.
And it's almost when you hear it presented in that way, you know, and we're both parents, it's like you sort of think, oh, what's this? You know, but obviously, they'd completely misjudged it. And actually, one of the things which has surprised me a little bit is that your events actually sound more organized than a lot of events I know happening today. You know, what you're doing and organize, you know, from the medical to the, you know, the production and stuff like that. These are things that are basics for the industry, but they don't always happen even still.
I mean, we really cared about the experience,
yeah,
you know, and that's why we became, you know, the brand that we did, right? And overnight is because we gave people an unbelievable experience. And that was quite hard to continue to do when you were up against the police as well and fighting against the police.
So you did get arrested a couple
got
of
arrested many times.
And what was the reason you got? What was the reason?
So
breach of the peace.
I think I was arrested a couple of times for like things like conspiracy to cause a public nuisance, which is quite a serious charge actually.
Yeah,
because the conspiracy part of it makes it quite serious. I mean, I was arrested once after the party that we did in Heston Services, which is the one that closed down the M4 and Heathrow.
It closed the airport down as well.
The airport
oh wow! No wonder they were after you.
Well, they had to close the M4 because people were parked on the hard shoulder, running across.
Oh my god!
The warehouse.
Wow!
Just behind Heston. So I got arrested, and the people that arrested me were driving a 2CV with a smiley face sticker on the back, and the officers, the female officers were wearing a pair of dungarees.
So they were undercover.
They were undercover.
Oh really? Oh wow!
Party unit. So it was pretty surreal at the time.
But I guess
it was public nuisance type stuff. It wasn't.
And you'd get fined.
I actually never actually.
I was going to ask that.
Did
you get? Yeah, I was going to say, did you get a record or anything? And how long have you been in jail? 24 hours or?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask, is there like one moment that you really, really remember from that period that it was like, wow, what am I doing? Or how did this
as a
happen?
promoter or as a punter?
I guess a bit both, really. Yeah, both.
So I mean, as a punter, probably. You know, one of the first early big raves I went to, which was a Sunrise. It was a mystery tour. People like got in a bus and got taken to the party, didn't know where they were going. And then only about 1,000 people. It was in an old equestrian centre. And then in the morning, when the party finished, everybody went out into the car park. Somebody jacked up, you know, the boot of their car and put their system on. And everybody started dancing in the car park. It was next to a church. And there were people coming into the church, and you know, there's some footage on this online. I think even some people think that David Cameron's in his footage, and when I look at it, it actually does look like quite like him.
But really?
But then after 300, 400 people dancing in the car park next to the church, after that finished, the bus driver who was supposed to take everyone home refused to, and one of the ravers just went, "I'm going to take everyone home." So basically. Drove everyone, and that's kind of, you know, that's about as crazy as I think it ever got.
Right, okay.
In terms of me as a punter, and that was just like, what the hell is going on? This is like kind of next level, crazy mad. As a promoter, I mean, there was quite a lot actually, to be honest.
How many of
I
these?
think the party we did at Heston, where we were surrounded by the police, we thought we were coming in at any one moment. We'd close the M4.
Yeah, that does sound pretty fucking.
You know, that was quite mad and quite stressful. But you know.
How many did you do in the end? How many?
So we did. So
kind of illegal orbital raves.
I'd break it into two really. So we had the summer of '89 where we did 3 large energy parties, and then one party called Dance '89, which is the one that a lot of people would have seen, and I showed some of the video.
Yeah. So sorry to jump on that. A lot of the footage from then, actually, probably not all of it, but most of the footage when you see of these parties, it's from your events, isn't it? Because you.
So we filmed
wisely filmed it.
Yeah, so we filmed, or we allowed somebody to film. So most of the 1989 rave footage, and it's only from a couple of parties that you see, is from ours. And especially the high res stuff that I've shared with you, where people are dancing on top of speakers. That was actually called Dance '89, so that wasn't an energy party, but we put it on, and that was really the last really big rave of the Summer of Love.
Right, really. And then after that, what, it just
so then after
stopped,
after that they brought in legislation, pay party legislation, to basically say that you needed a license and that you can have more than X amount of people, in a space without.
And would it get a serious fine?
And going to jail.
Right, you'd be going to okay.
But this wasn't the criminal justice bill. That was later, wasn't it?
It was later.
That was later. Yeah.
So this was a bill called the Graham Bright Bill,
right?
And it was brought in specifically, obviously, to counter what we were doing.
Yeah.
So at that point, then what?
So at that point, we just started doing legal parties.
Yeah.
So we moved into Brixton Academy. We did a number of really amazing shows there. Like that's when we were able to get back into production.
Right. Okay. Because you.
So we're in those shows production wise were really, really next level. We're the first people to use like Vari lights and moving trusses over your head, lots of kind of projection mapping on cubes and spheres all over. I mean, it was very well done, and we used Michael Jackson's sound system, his EVMT4 sound system.
Oh, really?
Right. Amazing sound systems, so we kind of took it next level. The vibe was never quite the same as it was when it was super free, and of course, being in Brixton, it was a bit edgy.
Yeah, I was going to say the type of production you do, it sounds very similar to what is kind of going on now.
It was definitely benchmark. Yeah.
You sort of setting the pace. I mean, that's really what I was going to ask you. Could you see anything happening like that? So like just within the scene, within culture, happening like that again, and where we are within dance music, should we say? Or do you think that was a special moment for that time?
I don't think you're ever going to see anything like that.
Yep.
There will certainly be something new that needs to come, and I think it will be, again, at the intersection of a new type of technology that makes the music. So maybe AI will be involved. I think it will be down to the political environment, which seems very fragile right now, and probably a good place to have a new type of, cultural movement around music. Normally there would be a drug involved, if you look back at history and how that's worked, but maybe not. It's really hard to see. I mean, I haven't seen anything yet, and I've still listened to a lot of music and are very much involved in that, and I haven't seen anything that looks like.
Do you see promoters trying to relive those kind of glory days? And is there any promoters that like you're really respecting about what they're doing now and trying to push the scene forward, or just trying to have a nod to those hazy early days, maybe?
So, I mean, I don't get out nearly as much as I used to, right?
I swear I've seen you in a few places.
I do. I get out. I guess I pick my moments, but I do look at what people are doing online. I mean, a couple of brands that really stick out for me, kind of on a raw rave production level that is also next level. What they're doing with Outworld, I think, is amazing. Their production is phenomenal. Whilst it's not particularly my style of music, I can appreciate that very raw, fast techno sound that they push behind it. Yeah. And looks like the energy on the dance floor. The kids have not got their phones out. That to me looks about as close to proper rave culture that I can relate to, that has also the production aesthetic.
Have you been to one as well?
I haven't. I really want to go to one. When one comes to London, I'll be going. They did a takeover of Universe, but just looking at what they do, it looks amazing. And it's not just about the production. They seem to have the community built around it as well. They're huge, these things. They're like 10,000 people they're doing. And, look, so that's really interesting. And then, on a more personal level, I went to Houghton last year, and, that just blew me away. The level of detail of curation, the experience, the music, the sound systems, the production. It's very low key, but just such a beautiful experience.
Yeah, done really, really well.
Amazing. I'd never been, but
before we carry on, do you know what? Even just not talking about Acid House, I'm on a downer now.
I'm trying to think about how to go back to it.
It's like,
back to reality.
The moment's gone, you know what I mean?
Let's get back.
Even just stop moving on from it. But yeah, no, I think, one of the things about you, Q, is that like you, and we can talk about Open Lab and the other things you've done in a bit, but you, you one of the most knowledgeable people I know, people who's most knowledgeable about music, and very like forward thinking and tastemaker, and finger on the pulse, new music. I think you said to me that a lot of the people who were involved with the scene then, kind of a gradual development and evolution, that you kind of become more of the establishment and perhaps go more commercial. Is that how you've seen it then? And like,
from my peers back then, there's been some very successful DJs, obviously. In terms of promoters, I haven't really seen anyone that has continued in a kind of cultural role.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm probably one of the oldies that actually has hopefully maintained some some cultural relevance all of these years later, and a lot of that's due to my love of music, really, and the culture that surrounds it. So I've been lucky to continue to work in interesting new projects that really do value integrity around music and culture. So but there are people from back then who I'm sure are involved. I just don't know exactly where.
I was going to ask you, we love talking about Acid House. That's right. Do you think it's important to remind the kids of today where kind of that this culture all came from, and to remind them, or is it just let them kind of do it? Or
I don't think.
I'm loving hearing about it.
I'm not preachy. A lot of my peers and people that into kind of old school, all they do is go, it's not like it used to be. And they obsess about how it's not like it used to be, but it can't be like it used to be.
Things evolve.
So but as I said, there's amazing stuff happening still. There's some really shit stuff happening.
Actually, this is one thing about you, right? But this is one thing about you, is like, because I'm always like in Ibiza saying, well, it's not for me, but I can see why people like it. You just go, no, that's crap, and you really will call it out.
There's some really awful things happening.
What tell us then? What?
Well, I just just the very pedestrian kind of Afro house movement. Phones up. These very large scale events that have no production value at all, yet 20,000 people. I have a lot of time for people like Anima who are doing really interesting things. Potentially not musically, it doesn't really work for me, but production wise, that's inventive. It's moved on though. That's moved on from being a dance music event
like a show,
to being a immersive event that you just kind of look at the screen. It's different, right? But there's a lot of really badly done dance music events that just focus. I mean, for me, a lot of the spirit of raving has been lost by elevated DJ culture, by having the DJ on the stage, by having all of the production in front of you. Production should be around you and over you. You don't want to be looking at the front of the stage when you're dancing. And that's what I loved about when I looked at Outworld. It was all about over your head, around you. Much more of an immersive experience.
And that worked in Universe, you said, because they
did it at Universe down the
production.
Down the panel. And I'm sure there's some really good. I mean, there's the underground scene. I think is really, really healthy. I mean, generally what I go to is festivals. And kind of smaller parties, and that to me seems very, very healthy. And these parties are really kicking off. I go to them and there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of people dancing. But
and then, really into
on,
it as
on
well.
the other hand, I see some stuff on social media because I would never set foot in these places, but you see, and there's just no vibe. There's just no vibe, and you know, that's a bit sad, but it's different. You know, maybe that I think you could probably equate the scene where it is now to, you know, the underground parties, the underground scene is acid house, and then the more commercial end of the market is the hippodrome, right?
Yep.
And that's always been the case. There's always been somewhere for people that are not particularly bothered about what they listen to. You know, they want to be out and seen and have a drink, right? And that's probably, I don't want to name any places, but that's that side of it. And you know, your likes of Houghton and your underground parties are, I think, probably keeping alive more of the acid house spirit.
Yeah, definitely. I could literally talk about acid house and the raves all day, but I really want to get on to like what happened next for you after that. You've had, from what I've been reading, you've had a really varied career, from a DJ producer to launching a number of products, working for
Groove Tech as well.
Yeah, Groove Tech. Yeah,
tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, just after promoting, during promoting, I started DJing, started producing music as well with the guy called Toby Grafty Smith, who then went on to be the keyboard player of Jamiroquai and wrote all their records. So we wrote some pretty good music. I DJ'd quite a lot between kind of 89 and, or actually more than 1990 and sort of 2000. I had quite a successful DJ career. And then as I started getting towards 30, I was just like,
you've been at it for 10 years.
Yeah. I need to.
I'm a veteran at 29.
Back in, I need to do something a bit more creative on a business level. You know, I want to, be involved in building a brand again. I got pretty badly burnt with energy. It was like, we put a lot of work and love into it, and it was hard towards the end to keep it going for a number of reasons. But so I wanted to get back into that, and luckily came across an opportunity where I was asked to help set up this new online radio station, which was pretty much the first electronic music radio station out there.
Because again, put the context,
Groove Tech.
I mean, the internet's in its infancy, really.
Only just started,
and there's along with stuff like Napster, it was that was the moment.
Yeah, there was no iTunes, there was no Beatport, there was no
YouTube,
no YouTube, nothing like that. So we launched that in that was launched in 1998. I basically set up the entire kind of international division of it in the UK. And brought in a lot of really cool talent, via my team. People like Andrew Weatherall had a weekly show.
Oh, really? Wow.
Andy C. Oh God, I mean, I can't remember, but it was super cool. It was a really new product. Nobody had really been listening to radio online before. So it was, 56K modems and,
dial up,
a few hundred people. But then we also built, on the business side, we built an online record store for vinyl. And we had, two very large warehouses where we were shipping vinyl all around the world. And we were the biggest individual seller of vinyl in the world at that time.
Wow. Okay. It's interesting. Just again, I know this story from you personally before, but just thinking about it now, those things that you're doing there, they're the beginnings of Beatport, beginnings of streaming.
It was
podcasts. It's that's that, isn't it?
You seem like you were at the beginning of a lot of these.
Too early. Too early with some
you're
stuff.
A pioneer,
definitely.
You're a pioneer in these things. So but it's again those are the seeds that lead to things later.
Groove Tech was responsible for doing quite a lot of stuff first. I mean, in online radio, we did it, before a lot of other people did it. We were doing live streaming. We live streamed from some events back then, right?
Oh wow!
Like the Detroit Electronic Music Festival, right?
Movement, is it? Yeah.
On Groove Tech, and technology wise, we built a very strong platform. We were serving like 100,000 users at one point, and we invented the wish list. Right, nobody had a wish list on a retail platform before up to that point. So we had a very strong. We did an IPO actually on the stock market to raise money, so it was quite a roller coaster.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. And how did that end? Did it?
So unfortunately, there was that tech bubble, right?
The bubble.com.
So we launched. We did an IPO on the AIM market in the UK. We raised a bit of money to to scale us. And then the crash happened, and our share price went down by 90%, and we couldn't raise any more money to continue. Had we continued even maybe 6 months, I think we would have been fine, because Apple launched iTunes in October of 23, and we went bust in May of 23. Once Apple had launched iTunes, investors suddenly came back and said, okay, this has got legs, right? It's this whole digital music thing.
You were just too early.
So we were too early.
Yeah,
we were too early. But I learned a huge amount through that. That was a proper roller coaster, going through from 3 people to 40, and from no revenue to like 3 million, which back then was huge amount of revenue.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Yeah, wow.
And learned a lot about the emerging digital music revolution, and then continued from there and started working for companies within digital distribution and content and rights. And
I mean, to bring it to the modern day, what you're talking about here really fits in with what you're kind of leading on at the minute, with Open Lab. Can you just tell us again how that story began with Robert Miles and your relationship with him? So by whenever it was, 2013, 2014, I'd had quite a lot of experience, 5, 6, 7 years in kind of emerging digital stuff, content, having run my own radio station. So I was consulting, and they approached me to come in and help. Robert approached me and his team to come in and kind of help strategize, this amazing product that he had, Open Lab. So I started working with him quite early on, maybe a year into Open Lab having launched, around the kind of content and strategy, not curation, because Robert was handling that very well. But because obviously again, to just speak about him for a moment, he's obviously known for big tracks in the 90s, but he was a visionary, wasn't he?
So he's quite misunderstood. Most people will know Robert Miles from his track Children, which is a very commercial, track, amazing track, but very commercial. I think one of the biggest selling electronic music tracks of all time. But underneath that, he was also writing jazz records and soundtracks, and his taste in music was phenomenal. As a curator, when I first looked at Open Lab and listened to Open Lab and looked what he was doing with the platform, I was completely blown away. I'd come from obviously Groove Tech, which was more of an online radio with hosted shows and people doing mixes, to Open Lab, which was really curated, which was basically Robert just picking out a dozen records a week and digitizing them and putting them onto the radio station in a programmatic way. So he was this kind of curation funnel where his taste went into the platform, and when it first launched, it sounded like nothing else in the world. It was so beautifully done, and I completely fell in love with the product. And so whilst he was known for his commercial records, he had impeccable taste of very sophisticated music. He's the best curator I've ever heard.
I mean, that shows through even today with the shows that are on Open Lab now, and the type of music that you play, and
I think it's
the talent that you.
It's that point. Sorry, it's that point, isn't it? It's curated. Having worked with you there, it's the process you guys go through in doing that is it's not it's not just putting some tracks together. It's done in a long process.
Yeah. So after Robert died, and the company had to kind of, go silent for a little bit. It took a while to kind of pull it back together. And then I decided I wanted to take it back on and relaunch it, because I thought it was a beautiful product. And as I said, I'd fallen in love with it, and I thought it had a great future, and also was a needed product in the market and for the people of Ibiza. What was always difficult was to step into Robert's shoes as a curator. Because you can never have exactly the same musical taste. But what was important to me is to replicate as much as possible the integrity of his music programming and follow the guidelines that he had around music programming, which I hope we've still done. It's changed.
I think you have, mate.
It changed, but music changes, right? A lot of people at the time said it doesn't sound like Open Lab. It's like, well, Open Lab went off air 2 years ago, and the type of music that was being released 2 years ago is not being released today. Everything changes. Music evolves, and new audiences.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, it's it was very sad with what happened, but I think he left an amazing legacy, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think
and it's you're pushing on with it now, and there's lots going on with
Yes.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, we've grown a lot in the last couple of years. And we've got some interesting expansion plans for next year. We've really grown our kind of show host base. We've got great new talent coming on board. We started doing a lot more events, both in the club space and also live kind of alternative events that we started doing in Ibiza, and we're going to follow on in the UK. And lots of great partnerships last year as well. So yeah, things are looking good with Open Level.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision to continue after he passed away, but I think he'd be proud of what you've achieved.
I hope so. I mean, he was very picky, so so I'm sure he'd have some opinions.
Yeah.
and he'd definitely let me know about them.
Amazing. Look, I just want to carry on talking about Acid House, but we're not going to do that. We're going to finish up. It's been amazing to have you on, but we always ask these questions.
We've got a few questions, yeah.
Yeah, just quick fire ones for you.
So, I mean, you might have touched on it already, but the club that changed your life.
So I think it probably would be Spectrum, which I'd been going to Acid House clubs a little bit before then, but that was like my first religious. I'm going there every week, and experience, and the people that I met there also. Anton and Mark Holmes, who ended up being our production guy. That was very formative in terms of, my career within music.
Okay, the record that changed your life.
So that changed my life. Okay, so that would probably be something like Cybertron Clear or Electro Street Sounds 1, the album. When I first started getting into electro, it was so futuristic and so new. And then I went to the Embassy Club as well when it was going. When I was very young, like 15, I managed to get in there.
Oh, really? You did start young, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I really did. And experienced, that kind of music on a system. So yeah, it was. Yeah, I think probably Cybertron actually, because when I first heard that, it was just like wow.
Okay. What is your best DJ of all time?
I think it's probably going to have to be Garnier.
Right, okay, great.
I haven't heard him play so much now, but the times when I have heard him play in the past, from 1990 onwards, when I was going out more than I do now, he was always next level. I have a huge amount of respect for him.
Well, he epitomizes, I guess, what a DJ is all about. And
he's unbelievably
curation as well.
He's unbelievably good technically. His curation. He lives in the moment.
The art of being a DJ.
He is the epitome of an artistic DJ.
Yeah, I recently went to there was like he DJs through dinner all night, and he just went from
where was
jazz to house to banging techno at the end. That was actually the Tate Museum in last August. I think I can't remember the name of it.
And Laurent played.
Yeah, he played for like 8 hours. Yeah. It's just his musical journey. It was, and the food was amazing as well. It was unreal, actually.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, sorry. Just bring it back to now. You said you don't go out much, but you're obviously very much involved in music. What's going on? What a DJ that everyone should check out right now to finish this off?
I mean, I think that's really hard because I listen to a lot of DJs. There are so many DJs now. And I'm quite, when I go out, I have a particular sound that I like to listen to on a dance floor. I mean, I like to listen to varied artists. So I'm going to just probably name a few who I really, really rate, and who every time I hear them, they blow me away with their selection. And, in a couple of cases, they're the time I share. Ben UFO, every time I've heard him play, has been phenomenal technically, and his diversity of music and the way that he's able to bring techno and dubstep and drum and bass and all of these genres together coherently. I think he's probably, beyond Garnier, the person that I've seen that has really blown me away.
Right, okay.
And then musically, I love artists like DJ Mazda, Cool Super, artists like this that play very emotional electronic music for the dance floor, but quirky and kind of quite deep and quite trancey.
Yep.
So I'll probably just leave it there.
Oh, okay, Brad. Great choice. Sorry, mate.
The best dance record of all time.
Okay, so for me, that's probably Morning After by Fallout. and the reason that it's, I think, so important to me is it was the soundtrack of Sunrise at some of those parties in 88 and 89.
It's a memory as well.
It's a beautiful record. It's a record that I actually still play today sometimes. It's very atmospheric. It's very emotional. It's quite a weepy track. And it's just, for me, that's probably my most seminal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh man, yeah,
it's just a great trip down memory lane.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are going to learn a lot about the Acid House, and also go and check out Open Loud, guys. There's so many great shows on there, and really thank you for coming on. And
thank you guys, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we loved that. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah,
you didn't make me sweat too much.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
Thank you.